Hello and welcome to the Minutes to Win It NBA podcast. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. Talking about minutes, injury concerns, things of that for tonight. Luckily, not a whole lot to deal with. If we're looking at point guards as far as injuries go, Mo Williams was listed as questionable, but he's now probable. You weren't playing him anyway, but I guess it would, if he were out, it would add some value elsewhere. He's really the only point guard, which is nice. So you've got some big names, though, in good spots. Steph Curry, facing off individual matchup against George Hill, not ideal, but as the best player in the NBA, I don't really worry about that. I guess it's not a nationally televised game. It technically is. It's NBA TV. Not everyone has that. It's not like an ESPN or ABC game, but still this is going to be a tough match for them. Obviously, Paul George on fire as well. So Steph Curry's still a guy that I would be terrified to not have shares of tonight.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I know we kind of look at the minutes here, and he probably should play 37, 38 minutes tonight and get that little extra. You look at the Toronto game where they kept it close, and then he dropped 60 fantasy points on DK. So you're looking at the same amount of minutes tonight. And then I know the matchup's not great, but I mean, this guy really is matchup proof.
Yeah, I don't care who is guarding Steph Curry. Steph Curry is still the greatest. And Damian Lillard, another guy that gets a great matchup here. And I mean, he's locked into 36, 37, 38 minutes roughly. Last two games down by his standards. Mid-30s in minutes, at least on FanDuel. But we know the drill here. We saw John Wall was awful all season, got himself off the snide there against the Cavs. Cavs just do not defend point guards well, so Damian Lillard definitely a guy that you want to throw into your lineups here tonight.
Yeah, and if you want to go a couple games back, he had a monster game against the Pacers, went 26, 9, and 3, so Curry on another level. So if you want to put that into consideration, I mean,
yeah.
Curry's going to go off.
I mean, I'm excited to watch that game because I do think Indiana can keep it close. And I love watching close games that Steph Curry plays in because he just takes over. And, I mean, I don't know if we're going to see a 30-point quarter, but I guess that depends on whether or not he feels like it or not.
Yeah, I mean, if we just see a Paul George and Steph Curry duo, like, just going back and forth, it'll be phenomenal TV.
Yeah, either way, if you're not watching that game, record it and watch it later.
Yes.
Some cheap guys at point guard. Pat Beverly just continues to get 20-ish fantasy points each night. 4,100 FanDuel, 47 DraftKings. He's a guy who's been playing right around 30 minutes a night, 26 to 30 for the most part. So you can go ahead and lock him in for some solid minutes there as well. One more guy who's been sneakily taking some minutes, and don't you play this guy in your cash games, but in GBP, Shane Larkin over the last couple games been more productive on a per-minute basis than Jarrett Jack has. Still not a guy with massive upside, but when you factor in his price, he's a nice guy to throw into your GPPs as that really, really low-owned guy that could end up getting you a nice return on salary.
Yeah, I kind of like that, especially for tournaments. I mean, the guy has 9 steals in the last 3 games, so it kind of helps his upside. I do think he has a little bit more upside than Beverly, which I would go with in tournaments, just because he has 2 30 fantasy point games in the last 3 there, so I do like the Larkin call for tournaments.
Yeah, one more guy that I know you like a lot, Elfrid Payton, should see 35 to 36 minutes roughly tonight, assuming this one stays close. Denver, as we know, doesn't defend point guards well. They don't defend anyone well, particularly. And really, Payton has a lower floor than you'd like him to have, but when his shot's falling, he has big-time upside. Obviously, he's a guy that his assist numbers have been really consistent, but the scoring itself has not been. But like you said, when he's looking to shoot, when his shot's falling, he's got big time upside at a mid-range type of price.
Yeah, I really like him, and I know I'm kind of hesitant on cash games, but the matchup's really good, the prices as well. So, I mean, he's kind of borderline cash game for me tonight, but I do like him more in tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the guy who's always in play in every format, regardless of who he's playing, James Harden. Right around $11,000 on both, or between $10,000 and $11,000 on both sites, playing at least 36 minutes in every game. When it's a close game, he plays in the 40s. His floor is about 45 fantasy points. His ceiling is about $1 million. I mean, he had an 84-point DK game a couple weeks ago against Portland. I mean, this is a guy that has probably the best floor of any player. And the only reason Steph Curry's not necessarily there is because the Warriors just blow out so many teams that they don't need him to play even in the fourth at all sometimes. So James Harden, probably the best floor of any player, and arguably the highest upside as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just love him because shooting guard is such a weak position. So, I mean, you got power forward, center, point guards. They all offer a much deeper selection where you can get mid-range guys that have a really solid floor. But I mean, point guard, shooting guard, Harden's going to get you 45 plus, and you just got to pay up for that.
Yeah, especially in your cash games. Will Barton, another guy to talk about here, seen right around 30 minutes, 31, 33 in his last two games. Gary Harris going to be out once again for this one. So this is going to be another good spot for Will Barton at his price. So he's a nice guy, really in all formats.
Yeah, I really like him. Averaging 15 and 7 in the last 6 games and playing right around 30 minutes, which is a good spot for him. Still coming off the bench, but I mean, he's really probably their best scorer.
Next up, Rodney Stuckey, obviously in that big game with the biggest total of the night, NBA TV game against the Warriors. Stuckey getting some big minutes now, 32, 31, 32 in his last 3 games. And he's been productive and not just scoring reliant like he had been at times in the past. 5 and 6 rebounds and assists, 5 and 2, 3 and 3, 7 and 2 over his last 4 games. So this is a guy Indiana's going to need to have all of their scorers scoring tonight if they're going to compete with the Warriors. You're not going to win this game in a defensive battle. So a guy like Stuckey is going to be a big key for that game tonight.
Yeah, I really like him as a value shooting guard tonight. Like you mentioned, they're going to need some scoring. And you got to look at the size of Warriors anyway. They're not extremely big, so you got to see the Pacers run out playing a little bit of small ball as well. Look at Stuckey as another 30-plus minute game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then moving over to small forward, of course, Paul George is going to be a popular play tonight, and rightfully so in that same game. Coming off of ridiculously good performance for him. 66 FanDuel points, 71 DraftKings points, 48, 8, and 3 with 3 steals against Utah. I mean, this is, like we already said earlier about the Steph Curry thing, this is going to be a fun one to watch. You don't want to be the one watching this game without pieces, at least somewhere, of Paul George and Steph Curry. So just go ahead and get Paul George in there with that LeBron James floor and the James Harden upside.
Yeah, you don't like LeBron's matchup against Aminu there. You don't like Durant. Well, you do like Durant, but I mean, Memphis is still a slow-paced team. Paul George is the small forward I want tonight of any of those 10-plus K small forwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Easily.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And then when you go down to the mid-range guys, a couple guys, Danilo Gallinari is going to play tonight. He's been a guy who hasn't really shown much upside price relative, but gives you a decent floor in the mid to upper 20s. So he's an okay guy to play should be in the mid 30s of minutes. But Gordon Hayward, the guy that you and I have been on this train for a while, and until his price actually goes up, I don't see any reason not to continue to play him in cash games. Just incredibly consistent, a guy who does have some upside at times, but he's going to get you your 30 to 35 minutes. Upwards of 40 in a close game. He's going to get you your 30 to 35 fantasy points seemingly every night, and he's just still too cheap.
Yep, I'm with you there. I think he's one of my favorite cash game small forwards outside of Paul George tonight. And looking at minutes, obviously 43, that game went to overtime, but 39, 38, 36, 40 the game before. I mean, he's going to play high 30s, and he's not a great fantasy points per minute guy, but if he's getting minutes, he's going to definitely produce.
Yeah, and then of course we got our cheap guys here. Amr Caspi should see right around 28 to 32 minutes here. Much better play on FanDuel where he's 4,300 compared to 5K on DraftKings. And then if you're looking for other cheaper options, you got a guy like Jeff Green who's just been okay. He's getting upper 20s in minutes, but much rather have a guy like Caspi than him. Same kind of goes for Matt Barnes, who's still seeing 26, 28 minutes most games, but just doesn't have much of a ceiling or a significant floor either, really.
Yeah, and if you're looking for a tournament guy, Trevor Ariza does have upside, but I mean, that floor is kind of among the likes of Caspi there and Green. So if you're looking to pay down and just get a value guy, definitely go that route. But if you want an upside, Ariza's not a bad option.
Yeah, absolutely. And then moving to power forward, you get Derek Favors, going to be a fun battle to watch him and DeMarcus Cousins tonight. He's coming off one of his best games of his entire career, actually, against Indiana. He's 8,300 on FanDuel. Same price is Draymond Green, who I like more on DK than FanDuel because he is a little bit cheaper, and he's got that potential for the double-double or triple-double and triple-double bonus. And in his last 6 games, he does have 2 triple-doubles and came pretty close just about every one of those other games as well to a triple-double. So a game like this should be close till the end. His minutes are safe in the mid-30s, even if it is a blowout for the most part. So this is a guy that I probably play more in tournaments because I'd like to spend elsewhere with power forward not having elite top options, but he certainly has that big upside.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I mean, the guy's pretty much averaging a triple-double this season, 13, 8, and 7. as for minutes wise, he's always going to get around 35 range. It's not going to be a blowout tonight, so you don't really got to worry. But even if it does, Green plays through it anyway. So I'm with you there. I just think power forward, you kind of want to pay down a little bit and pay up for guys like Curry and George and Harden.
Yeah, another guy that's been a great cash game play recently, playing 33 to 36 minutes most nights. Thad Young, still right around 7K on both sites. And aside from that dud against Phoenix, he's been over 30 fantasy points in all but one of his last 10 games, at least FanDuel-wise. Obviously higher on DK there. So he's another one of those guys at that mid-range price you can just lock in and pretty much expect his 30-point floor.
Yeah, I like him a lot too. His price has come up a little bit in the recent weeks, but still a solid play.
Yeah, absolutely. And then as far as cheap guys go, not a whole lot to like down here. Ed Davis is a guy who's been seeing solid minutes. I know you've been on his wagon there for a little while. 27, 28 minutes his last two games, 28 and 31 fantasy points. A slightly tougher overall matchup against Cleveland, but individually going to see some Kevin Love, as we know, not known for his defense. So Ed Davis, a guy still more reserved for GPPs. He does have upside relative to his price, but doesn't have a great floor, though.
Yeah, I just think his minutes are always inconsistent, but he has been getting at least 26 in the last 6 games there, and averaging 9 and 9. I think it's pretty solid. It'll probably be around that range tonight, but I'm definitely with you. Just more of a tournament play, just because we've seen Ed Davis get off these stretches before, and then all of a sudden it comes to a crashing halt.
Yeah, and then we see a 7-minute game, and he ends up with less than ideal performance. So definitely a GBP guy, but keep him in consideration. DeMarcus Cousins, of course, a power forward on DraftKings, center on FanDuel. FanDuel dropped his price due to some recent subpar games by his standards, at least. But he's the guy who does have a fairly tough matchup against favors, but he called himself out recently about his recent play. So we know the type of ceiling he has. Not a guy that I'm going to be paying for cash games, especially a similar price to James Harden on DraftKings, no way. But certainly a guy that I want to have some exposure to in tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be the lowest owned superstar tonight for sure. So I just think with the matchup and the price considered, we know he has a pretty high upside. And, without Rudy Gobert down there, I think you like his matchup a little bit better than before.
Yeah, and then one other guy I really like in tournaments, Nikola Vucevic, right around 7K on both sites. The guy that his minutes have been somewhat inconsistent, and that's mostly due to the fact that the team has been inconsistent, and Scott Skiles just
is the worst.
He's the Walt Weiss of NBA coaches. But either way, great matchup for Vooch tonight against the Denver front court that, as we know, same old story for years, broken record, bad defensive front court. They have size down there now. They don't seem like they know how to use it or make any decisions. But either way, they're a decent rebounding team, but Vooch is a guy that, he just lives in the paint, and he can put up points in a hurry, assuming that this one's close, and it definitely should be. So individual matchup, definitely nice for him.
Yeah, I think this game's one of my actual favorites for value. There just seems to be value at each position in this game, and I mean, 2 not great defenses, and I know Vegas isn't really respected as a high offensive game, but I think it could be pretty sneaky tonight.
Yeah, I like that call there a lot. So that's going to wrap things up here for us for the Minutes to Win It podcast. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out the rest of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.